Another day, another sports card scam. I'm going to take you through the news that came to me through a few tags on Twitter over the last few days. Pretty alarming situation, if I do say so myself. This is in relation to somebody with a somewhat of a public platform, using that platform to scam customers out of, large sums of money. You're talking upwards of $10,000 at this stage, as we know right now. I'll take you through the facts. I'll take you through some additional information that has since come to light. And then, I'll take you through some tips and tricks at the very end on how to sort of, avoid this moving forward, because there's lots of red flags here that are pretty common with regards to these kinds of scams. And hopefully you guys can learn from it and do a bit better yourselves in the future with regards to, avoiding being scammed. Now, this is posted by JD9 Cards on Twitter. Essentially, he bought a 48 Jackie Robinson, I believe it is, from Chris Harabe, who is a public persona. I'll get to that in a second, or was a public persona. Basically bought this 2 weeks ago, so at the very start of February, or the 12th of February, I should say. Basically hasn't shipped it, hasn't provided a coin, has basically given him the runaround with regards to his messages. I'll take you through those in a second as well. But the reason why he's tagged the St. Louis Blues is because this guy used to be one of those, in-stadium announcers for them, right? He was the guy that would commentate the games for their fan TV. He's the guy that would commentate, within the stadium for the fans, right? So he was employed by the St. Louis Blues. Now, essentially, before I go into a bit more information on that, you can see his account is verified, and it's verified under the old Twitter method, right? Not the one you pay for yourself right now. So essentially, you have a multitude of screenshots here of the communication between the two of them, and basically this guy continually asking for, photos, and to be let known when tracking is going to be provided, right? And a pretty big red flag straight off the bat with regards to his first response is, he talks about having a family emergency, which is why, he was unable to post it, or why he was unable to give an update, right? And if you guys are part of that Facebook scammer tracker group that I always talk about all the time, this is the kind of message you see all the time. And you don't even have to be part of that group, right? If you're on a Facebook page and you're being around people that have flagged scammers in the past, this is the first thing that these scumbags try and do, right? They try and talk about how there's some sort of, alarming family emergency, or something's happened in terms of their life that they have to focus on, which is why they've had that delay in getting the thing to you. Now, don't think I'm a cold-hearted person, right? Because that stuff can happen to people, and it is really unfortunate. But it's just a really common red flag that you see all the time in this sort of stuff. And basically, he talks about it. Okay, I'm going to post it for you tomorrow. Basically, nothing, no response on the tracking or the photos. Brian's obviously, JD Cards, is constantly checking in to no response. After a few days, he gets another response like this: I'll call you in a bit. He doesn't get a phone call, right? And basically, this is the tone of the conversation between the two. Now, there's many more screenshots down here where, again, he basically says, you know what? It's Jonah, JD Cards, I bought the Jackie from you. Can you sort of help me? I'm texting you now. Can you reply to my Twitter messages? Again, he's saying the same sort of things, talks about his dad being quite sick, which, I'd be shocked if that was the case based on, some of the commentary we've seen that I'll show you in a second from other people. But basically keeps using that as an excuse to try and guilt this guy into the reasons why he's not posted the card. This trend essentially continues for like a bunch more days, basically saying he's going to FaceTime him, he's going to send it now. Doesn't happen. Obviously, it's not going to happen, right? Because the guy's outright trying to scam. You can sort of see this. He's basically given him an ultimatum after, numerous, basically about a week of getting the runaround, right? And some of you might say, well, a week is not that long. Well, okay, it's not. But when you're sort of getting the runaround like this, you can sort of justify this guy saying, you know what, after a week, you need to sort this crap out because I'm going to post this online unless you do something about it, right? And there's a few more screenshots. Again, the same sort of thing. Basically giving excuses. He talks at one point here, I believe, I think it's in this one, talking about, having to go back to Chicago, even though the day earlier he basically implied that he was already back from Chicago. So he's sort of, crossing over his lines, getting confused with what he's already said. The guy's basically fed up at this point. So he does post it. It gets a bit more interesting down here where you can sort of get a lot more comfort that the guy basically is a scammer. He's talking about how he's got some limit on his account and so on and so forth. But what's interesting here is that he sends this screenshot, and according to JD9 Cards, this is the same screenshot that he's tried to send in the past with regards to his excuses, right? He's trying to say he just tried to transfer the money again through Zelle. It's not working. Again, right, this is typical scammer behavior. Now, apologies if I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but it's part of the understanding, right, for the whole context of the situation. Now, it is pretty unfortunate, and he has since obviously posted on Twitter, which is how it was tagged towards me and how a few people reached out to me. And lo and behold, Chris has basically responded to the guy asking him to take down the post, which is, pretty it's a weird thing to do, right? It's a bit of an asshole thing to do. All of a sudden, you sort of AWOLing this guy, not communicating to him, giving him a runaround. And the second he calls you out for your behavior, you say, "Oh no, please take it down. I'll sort you out. I'll sort you out." I just want to quickly interject here before we go through the rest of the video. So right as I got done filming, somebody messaged me and told me that the guy, Chris, was actually refunding half the money with the remainder to come not long after that. Now, how much of this is based on goodwill or good faith, I don't know. I feel like it's more like the guy's just had his hand caught red-handed, hand in the cookie jar sort of situation. I think it's really good that he's getting his money back in this specific instance. At least I hope he gets it all back. It hasn't been confirmed to me just yet. If it does, I'll put it down in the comments below. But again, given that we've seen other people come out, at least I think I've just talked about it. If not, you're going to see it when we jump back into the video. I've talked about getting scammed by this guy. You're talking about screenshots that he just sent that I just shared with you where he's basically sending the same thing twice. He's falling over his lies. He's making up stories. Those things could be true, but when you factor those in, that he's been caught out on his lies, he's falling in on them, you've got other people calling out the same sort of situation. This is more like the guy's trying to save face and actually refunding the guy as he should. So we'll jump straight back into the video now. But again, please share your thoughts down in the comments below. If any additional information comes up later on within the day, I'll put it down in the pinned comment down below. But it gets a bit more, alarming than that, right? Because obviously since this was posted, a few people have said, you know what, this guy has scammed me as well. And what JD Cards has in this screenshot right here talks about, as you can see, that he's not scared of being scammed because this Chris Harabe guy has a verified account, right? It's not a paid for verified account, it's a proper verified account. He's obviously a public persona, so he feels a bit more comfortable doing this transaction. And I'll get to my point on that in a second, but as this guy does say here, that's why he uses this account. He uses this account because it gives people comfort. Now, given that we've seen other people comment on this thread that they've been scammed by this dude, and there's another dude over here that talks about how he was basically put in a similar situation and it's actually ongoing right now, that tells me that the guy's using this public persona to try and leverage people into feeling comfortable to then get scammed, right? And it goes to what I've said many times on the channel. Just because somebody is talking to you about, like on a YouTube account, they've got a big Instagram following, it doesn't mean you can trust them, right? There's so many people out there that use that platform to try and prey on you. It's same goes for me, right? If you want to do a deal with me, don't trust me. And I am a nice guy, but you guys won't believe that, right, until you actually transact with me. So don't take what you're seeing on my camera as face value. Even though I like to present myself the way that I am actually in real life, people like this guy don't, or so it seems, and they use that to try and take advantage of you. So basically trust no one is essentially where you should be trying to get. And what is a bit more interesting is that the guy doesn't actually work for the St. Louis Blues, even though he still flags that he does. And these guys have commented, as in the sporting club has commented somewhere within this thread, if I remember correctly, on the fact that that is the case. The guy does not, in fact, be employed by them anymore, despite this guy still using that as his name. Again, another tick in the box for getting a bit more comfortable that this guy is actually scamming people. It also says online that he works for Webster University. Those guys down here basically said he has not worked as a professor at our university for a number of years, or for several years, as they do state, which is, again, pretty alarming that this guy, in his information online, has these things that talking about him still being employed at these businesses, but he's actually not there. Again, that tells you what, dude's probably playing the scamming game pretty hard. Now, to give you a bit more comfort on some of these additional people, so Ryan Cards, who's got a pretty big following, as you can see here on Twitter, 30,000, he's verified as well, basically does a lot of buying and selling on Twitter. He talks about in this thread somewhere, which I probably won't be able to find right now. Actually, I had it saved, but I can't find it. Talks about having a very similar experience with this guy a number of months ago. If you do come in here and read the thread yourself, I'll put it in a link down below. You'll see that basically lots of people have come out and said, yes, this guy's scammed me in the past as well. So it is, like I said, a pretty alarming situation, and it goes to the things I say all the time. Just because somebody is verified, just because they appear to be a public figure, you can't trust them. And I know it's a really sad thing to say, right? Because ideally you want to try and put faith in people, but it's just, really unfortunate that there are people out there preying on this mindset from you guys as potential buyers. I think someone's done a tally and it looks like it's over $10,000 USD worth of known cards right now. This guy's taken the money for and not shipped the card. Again, this guy probably, JD Cards, should have done the coining first, as he does explain in one of his posts. But people get lulled into a false sense of security with regards to trusting these people. You just can't do it. And when it comes to tips and tricks, like the second you have that kind of response for somebody, you need to try and get your money back more immediately. And I know Zelle doesn't work the same way it does as PayPal in terms of goods and services, but if you want to buy a card, right, and the person only wants to take friends and family, the goods and services amount is actually not that much more expensive. Just pay the fee yourself to send a goods and services, because is it really worth the risk? That's the biggest tip you can do right there. Just pay that little bit of extra money to just protect yourself at all times, because otherwise you're gonna get scammed like this specific instance right here. And again, those red flags, they're pretty consistent. Like, you look at any scammer in any space. I remember there was a guy here in Australia that did a pretty big watch scam where he was basically had a huge following, had a huge YouTube channel, essentially sold fake watches to people and used his platform to try and, shut down their voice as admins of certain Facebook groups and all that sort of stuff. And when it came to giving, the excuses for why he couldn't refund the money, it was the same sort of stuff. It talked about having a sick family member, having talked about how, a house just burnt down. And obviously in Australia at the time, we had, I shouldn't say obviously, but we had some pretty big bushfires and lots of people lost their lives. So the fact that this guy was using that as an excuse is a pretty bad thing. And the fact you've got people like this guy, again, using sick family members as an excuse, they all have the same problem. Or I'm out of town, I got back late, I couldn't send it, I've got limits on my account, so on and so forth. Just ignore that crap. The second you see it, go after these people, because chances are they're not being genuine, they're being dishonest in the first place. And I think it's pretty evident. Now, when it comes to tips and tricks, I've already sort of touched on those, right? It comes down to using common sense, okay? Just because somebody's verified, don't trust them. And again, that's a sad thing to say, but you got to protect yourself, right? Because would you feel comfortable losing that $4.5 grand for that Jackie Robinson card, or $3.5 grand, whatever it was? No, you wouldn't, right? And just pay the extra for the fees. Okay, it's a little bit more money. Who cares? Try and do deals face to face if you can, right? Do transactions with the cards in hand and cash. Again, that's not always feasible, but those are the steps you probably need to take. And again, another big thing for this would be to try and search on Twitter as an example to see if any deals or this guy had been mentioned in the past. You can't be so quick to trust people. That Facebook scammer tracker group that I talk about all the time is a fantastic way to try and spot scammers, because so many people go on there and post about these scammers, and they're very detailed with regards to their posts as well. So if there's somebody that you haven't transacted with in the past and you want to know a bit more information about them, go to that group, ask for vouchers, right? Tag them on Twitter, tag all the big accounts on Twitter and say, has anybody bought from this person before? Can you please vouch for them? And then if nobody responds, or if you get some negative content, then that tells you all you need to know. Go to the Facebook groups and do the same sort of thing. You basically need to be overly cautious with everything you do. And again, it's really unfortunate to have to say that, right? Because as people, you want to sit back and, trust people and think that people are out there being nice people, being good people. But as I've said time and time again on the channel, sports card space is booming, as it has been, even though it's been on a bit of a decline right now. And so many guys are, number one, trying to cash in on that mindset of people trying to get cheap cards to flip. But also, so many people are out there trying to recoup the losses they've made over the last 2 to 3 years by buying too high. And the barrier to entry to scam people in this space is really easy. You've got so many platforms now where photos of cards are taken for sale, right? They could take a photo from any website that you don't even know about. So when you go check on eBay, you don't see it on there, as an example, not knowing that this person has taken that photo, pretending that they own the card, done a fake coin, and they've shown it to you now in a trade, in a message chat, or whatever it is, to try and scam you and trick you and all that sort of stuff. And again, just be overly cautious. Use those groups that I always touch on. I'll put a link again down to the Facebook Scammer Tracker group, because it is, so fantastic to try and support you. Start following some of these big accounts like Ryan Cards on Twitter. So when you do want to transact with someone, you can tag them and find out a bit more information. That's sort of it. I don't think I missed anything. There was a few other people that commented on the thread, like I said, that I can't, find right now, that talk about getting scammed by this guy, a number of months ago. It's not really, in the grand scheme of things, $10,000, which is the total we have right now, is not a whole lot of money, but it is to an average Joe, right? And it's these kinds of little ones that you need to call out. And the reason why I do talk about them on the channel, so you guys can get educated. Number one, to avoid it yourself, but number two, to share it with people, to talk about it with people, to make sure that these kinds of people don't get away with essentially what they're doing. Now, it looks like there's a bit more of a deep dive into where this guy is actually working right now. I don't want to dox the person, even though he is a scammer. Let's sort of see what happens next. But again, depending on his response to this situation and his response to the other people that he scammed, we might need to do a bit more of a deep dive on this guy and some of his bad happenings, because this is not a good look. And on face value, I'm pretty comfortable in saying the guy's a scammer. So please share your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.